Welcome to Executive Insights. My guest today is Chris Finan, Chief Operating Officer with ActZero, an AI-powered managed detection and response platform. Chris began his career as a U.S. Air Force pilot and intelligence officer, and went on to serve in the White House as the Director of Cybersecurity Legislation and Policy for the Obama administration. In this episode, Chris talks about the exact moment he realized that cybersecurity was going to be his next mission and what's influenced his focus shifting from the cybersecurity policy side to technology innovation. I asked Chris for his perspectives about what's changed in the industry in the past decade and what a CIO in the SMB and mid-market space should be mindful of when building a cybersecurity strategy. Hi, Chris. Thanks for joining me and welcome to Executive Insights.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Chris, you began your career as a U.S. Air Force pilot and an intelligence officer. I mean, that's a pretty impressive start to anyone's career. What have you learned about yourself from those early experiences?
I think the thing that I probably learned the most about myself, it was a great joy to get to do that. I was very fortunate. The thing that I probably learned again about myself was I'm happiest when I'm focused on a big problem, and solving a big problem, and having that mission focus. Kind of irrespective of comp or pay or title, that mission focus, being able to really think about solving something big. That for me was always, having that inspiration was always the most important thing.
Yeah, speaking of mission, when did it become clear to you that cybersecurity was going to be your next mission?
Good question. You know what? I can tell you exactly when it was. It would have been February 2011. I know that time period because that was when the NASDAQ was breached. The government ran the response out of the executive branch, out of, in fact, the White House situation, where there were a period of time, a few days, where we weren't exactly sure how detrimental it might be and the scope of the impact. And so a lot of that coordination was happening at the very highest level of the US government. And it was at that moment when I recognized just how impactful cybersecurity can be to a society. And it just really, I think, helped me understand the scope of the challenge that was facing us.
Yeah, you talked about your work at the White House. So, you went from the Pentagon to the White House and then to Darpa. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with Darpa?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Darpa was really informative for me for a lot of reasons. I think, though, one of the things that I really appreciated about Darpa was just the organization is very good at studying the state of the art and thinking about innovation from a lot of different perspectives. I think that's one of the things that it does well. It also, I think, takes calculated risks very well. But in this case, what was so informative about Darpa at that point, this was maybe 10 years ago, was in studying the state of the art of cybersecurity, we were able to really look at the adversary models. And one thing that stood out to me at the time was how much criminal organizations were investing in automation and intelligence to really scale up their operations and bring more sophisticated attacks to market more quickly and at higher scale. We are now seeing, I believe, the results of a lot of those investments that began, 5 to 10 years ago. We're now seeing the impact of those investments because of the scale of the activity and the relative degree of sophistication that we're seeing now come down market and impact much broader sections of the society. Whereas in the past, we would see it, those types of sophisticated attacks target, global institutions like the NASDAQ, right? Now we're seeing that same level of sophistication impact county hospitals and municipal water services. So I think that to me always stood out at Darpa, and I've tried to carry that with me in always thinking about and letting the adversary be my guide. If I'm stuck on a tough product question, I always try to ground it in What is the adversary doing? What is their model? How are they innovating? Because that's ultimately who we want to get in front of. And so, anytime you can let the adversary be your guide in cybersecurity, you're probably pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, that's such an insightful point. I can certainly appreciate that your experience at DARPA may have helped define your next mission, which is addressing the technical challenges of security by focusing on technology innovation. Since DARPA, you moved to Silicon Valley and became involved in a number of technology startup ventures in cybersecurity and blockchain. I'm curious about your perspective. You've mentioned about how the tactics are changing with regards to the adversary. What else is changing when you're looking back in the last 10 years in cybersecurity space?
Well, there's been a lot more specialization. There's tools for everything now, a lot more data as a result. Infrastructures, IT infrastructures have become a lot more heterogeneous, more diverse. Workplaces have become much more distributed. And, data protection requirements have also increased. So there are a lot more drivers than simply protecting against an attacker, and there are also there's just a lot more complexity now. And as a result, I think many of our cybersecurity problems are rooted in data management problems, data access, data management, data protection, data fusion, and of course, analysis. So at the end of the day, cybersecurity is becoming increasingly focused on solving analytical problems. I think that's good. Ensuring that we've got the specific knowledge and domain expertise that we're applying as part of that, also really key. At the same time, because the infrastructures are so much more diverse, thinking about how to enable quick response across that very distributed infrastructure workforce can be also now a challenge and an increasing challenge. So it's interesting. I think that's probably the hardest thing has been the distribution of capabilities and just the Cambrian explosion of tools and data, and being able to, at the end of the day, we need to create systems that take this really complicated attack surface and reduce it and make it manageable so that we can protect it, but also so that we can understand it and so that we can understand if we're making progress in protecting it. And I think more and more that is becoming the challenge. It's not just a data fusion problem. It's understanding if you are making a difference and understanding the risks in this ever evolving, very complex system of systems.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And fast forward to the beginning of 2020, you joined ActZero as the Chief Operating Officer. What is it about ActZero that got you so excited? And as a COO, how would you approach solving your customers' problems and growing your business in such a crowded space?
It is a crowded space, no doubt about it. Cybersecurity as an industry is crowded, and there's a lot of marketing noise. I think as any practitioner can attest. That was part of the appeal. There wasn't any obvious market leader, particularly for our segment, which is trying to service smaller organizations, mid-sized companies, and small organizations. So that was actually part of the appeal. It was the challenge was how do you deliver great value to smaller companies who are probably more cost constrained or price conscious. And our entire thesis is really based on delivering this tightly scoped service at a great value rather than looking for ways of just selling more tools or more features. So that actually appealed to me. I liked that part of the problem. I also felt like it aligns incentives with us and the market we're trying to serve a lot more. Companies that are trying to do more with less, right? Trying to protect against more sophisticated attacks when you are price constrained or cost constrained, I should say. And it also means that we have to continually automate, just like the attackers, to be more efficient, which again I like because I want the attacker to be our product guide, and I think anytime we can do that, we're always going to have product market fit. So I like the challenge of ActZero was so unique because first we're trying to protect the little guy rather than try to go and sell some new tool to a big bank. It's really about how do you make security really outcome based? How do you do that efficiently? And how do you make it easy to consume? I just fundamentally liked that as a product challenge, and I like the challenge of trying to differentiate from the noise based on that real value, based on those outcomes. I think that's where the goodness is. It's challenging, but again, I felt like ultimately our thesis really aligns with the customer need, and so I think I liked it for all those reasons, and it just felt like the right place to be and the right problem to focus on.
Yeah, and for CIOs in the SMB and mid-market space who are typically challenged with limited budgets and resources, what should they be mindful of when building a cybersecurity strategy?
I would say focus on what matters, measure what matters, John Doerr. Don't try to be great at everything. Just understand your principal risks, and then build out your governance so you're continuously measuring those risks, and focus security investments on delivering the highest possible impact against those risks. And I think if you can do that, then now you're paying for outcomes, not tools or features. So to me, that's the way we run our business. And every security leader that I get the pleasure of speaking with in my job, and it is a pleasure because it helps me understand the market we're trying to serve better. That to me seems to always be the common ground, is that if we can help them better understand the risks, if we can then focus our outcomes on helping them to address their highest risks and demonstrably show that to them, then we're delivering value, right? Then we're delivering those outcomes and that value. And especially if you're continuously assessing what matters. And I'm a big fan of the John Doerr measure what matters. As my team can attest, if you can be in that very data-driven mindset, then I think even because of all the complexity, in spite of all the complexity, you can make an impact. And even if the landscape continues to evolve, and as it will, because it's very dynamic, if you're continuously assessing and measuring, you can always focus on delivering that highest impact. So I think if you can adopt that philosophy and that governance approach, it's a way to distill the exceedingly complex into something that is much more approachable. So very, very much, again, our mantra as a company, but something that I think also, again, aligns us very well with how CIOs in this day and age need to operate.
Excellent piece of advice. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time. I really enjoyed this insightful conversation.
That's my pleasure. Thank you.
You've been watching another episode of Executive Insights by the IT Media Group. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please check out other CIO and leadership-centric content on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe.